During one of these shopping trips, I walked alongside a young boy named Marcus who was carefully selecting a gift for his mother. As he deliberated between choices, he looked up at the officer accompanying us, Officer Daniels, and asked, "Do you really catch bad guys?" Daniels knelt down to his level and replied, "Yes, we do, but we also help people and make sure everyone feels safe, especially during Christmas." This simple exchange, heartfelt and genuine, was a small yet profound embodiment of the message we wanted to spread. Back at the precinct, the holiday spirit was tempered by the need to maintain vigilance. Crime tends to spike during the holiday season, and we were prepared to handle any situation with the sensitivity and professionalism that our recent reforms had instilled. I made it a point to participate in nightly patrols, not only to ensure our presence was felt, but also to continue demonstrating my commitment to both the officers and the community. One cold December evening, while on patrol, we received a call about a domestic disturbance. As we approached the scene, I could feel the tension among the officers. Domestic calls were unpredictable and potentially dangerous. However, the training and policies we had put in place guided our approach. We managed the situation without escalation, providing support and resources to the affected family and ensuring their safety, a direct result of our emphasis on de-escalation and empathy. This incident was a reminder of the challenges that still lay ahead. Each call, each interaction was a test of our commitment to change. As the year drew to a close, I gathered the department for an end-of-year meeting. I addressed the force with a mix of commendation and encouragement. This year has been one of transformation and challenge. I began. Thanks to your hard work and dedication, we've seen remarkable progress. But our journey is not over. We must continue to learn, to adapt, and to strengthen the bonds we've begun to forge. The meeting ended with applause, a collective acknowledgement of the strides we had made and the path still before us. I stayed back as the room cleared, reflecting on the year. It had been one of profound change, and while the seeds of transformation had been sown, they would need careful tending in the years to come. As the new year loomed, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The changes we had implemented were taking root, but they would require ongoing nurturing to fully mature. The community's response had been encouraging, yet I knew that the true test of our reforms would be their sustainability over time. Looking ahead, I was committed to continuing our progress, to making Springfield not only a safer place, but a model of community policing that could inspire other cities. The road ahead was long, but for the first time in many years, it was clear, guided by the principles of justice, empathy, and unwavering service. As the snow began to fall outside my office window, blanketing the city in white, I felt ready for whatever challenges and opportunities the new year might bring. The New Year's challenge. As the new year dawned in Springfield, the fresh snow seemed to symbolize a clean slate. But the reality of law enforcement is that challenges don't adhere to calendars, and ours were no exception. Just days into January, a major incident tested our newly established protocols and the resilience of our community relationships. A serious burglary spree targeted several local businesses, causing concern and fear among shop owners and residents. The crimes were sophisticated, indicating a level of planning and execution that suggested the involvement of an organized group. This situation was precisely the kind of challenge that could either cement the trust we had worked so hard to build or fracture it. Given the complexity of the case, I mobilized our special units, incorporating both seasoned detectives and officers who had been trained in our new community engagement methods. It was crucial that our response be both effective in solving the crimes and sensitive to the community's anxieties. We held a press conference to inform the public about the situation. I stood before the cameras, detailing our strategy and affirming our commitment to transparency and swift justice. We understand the concerns of our local business owners and residents. I assured them, and we are employing every resource available to apprehend those responsible and prevent further incidents. Parallel to our investigative efforts, we increased our presence in the affected neighborhoods. This wasn't just about showing force. It was about being accessible. Officers on patrol made it a point to stop in and talk with shop owners, offering reassurance and advice on security measures. These interactions were critical in maintaining the community's trust. As the investigation progressed, we found crucial evidence that led us to a local gang that had been quiet for some time. With meticulous planning, based on intelligence and community tips, we executed a series of coordinated raids. The operation was a success, resulting in multiple arrests and the recovery of stolen property. The resolution of the burglary spree was a significant win for the department and the community. But I knew it was the manner in which we achieved it that would have the lasting impact. At a follow-up community meeting, I presented the case as an example of our new approach in action: proactive, respectful, and community-oriented. Feedback from the community was overwhelmingly positive. At the meeting, a local business owner stood up to speak. "I want to thank the Springfield PD," he said, echoing the sentiments of many, "not just for solving the case, but for how you handled it. You've shown that you really are here to serve and protect us." This validation from the community was gratifying, but the challenges of maintaining and expanding our reforms remained. As the year unfolded, we continued to refine our practices. We expanded our community policing initiatives and increased training in areas like mental health awareness and cultural sensitivity, ensuring that our officers were not only enforcers of the law, but also capable guardians of the community's well-being. The trials we faced brought lessons, and each lesson made us stronger. As spring approached, bringing with it the promise of renewal, I looked over our city from my office, pondering the future. Our journey of transformation was far from complete, but each step forward strengthened my belief in our mission. As the trees began to bud and the days grew longer, the challenges of the past seemed like stepping stones, leading us to a brighter, more inclusive future. The bond between the Springfield Police Department and the community we served was stronger, but always in need of care and attention. My commitment to nurturing this relationship was unwavering, driven by the belief that together, we could face any challenge and emerge stronger. Looking out over Springfield, I was filled with a renewed sense of purpose and optimism. The path forward was indeed bright, illuminated by the shared commitment of a police force and a community united in their desire for a safer, fairer, and more just city. Consolidation and forward momentum, as spring ushered in a season of growth and renewal across Springfield. The police department embraced this spirit by deepening our engagement initiatives and refining operational strategies that had been set in motion over the past year. The positive outcomes from our recent efforts were palpable. Yet with the new season came new challenges and opportunities for further integration of community-oriented policing. One of our major spring initiatives involved setting up neighborhood safety seminars aimed at educating residents on personal and community safety while reinforcing the role of the community as active participants in crime prevention. These seminars were held in various neighborhoods, especially those that had been most affected by crime in the past. They served as platforms not only for education, but also for dialogue, where citizens could voice their concerns directly to officers and receive immediate feedback. During one such seminar, a turning point occurred that highlighted the evolving relationship between the community and the police. A local resident, who had been vocal in her criticism of police tactics in the past, stood up to express her newfound perspective. "I was skeptical at first about these changes," she admitted, "but seeing officers regularly walking the beat, actually stopping to talk to us, not just when there's trouble, it's starting to make a difference." Her acknowledgement was a testament to the hard-won trust we were building, and it encouraged us to push further in our reform efforts. Encouraged by this feedback, we expanded our walking patrols, pairing officers with community liaisons to ensure that our presence was not only seen as authoritative, but also as supportive and approachable. The focus on youth engagement also intensified during this period. We launched a series of youth police academies designed to familiarize young people with law enforcement activities and foster mutual understanding. These academies included workshops, sports activities, and mentorship programs where youths could interact with officers in a positive, informal setting. The aim was to break down barriers between young residents and the police, addressing misconceptions and building a foundation of mutual respect from an early age. These community-focused initiatives were running parallel to our internal review processes. We continued to refine our training programs, integrating advanced conflict resolution techniques, and enhancing our focus on mental health first aid, ensuring that our officers were not only enforcers of the law, but also capable of addressing and de-escalating situations sensitively and appropriately. As we moved towards summer, the department prepared for the annual Springfield Community Festival, an event that had always been a significant but sometimes strained occasion in the city's calendar. This year, however, we plan to use the festival as a showcase of the new police-community partnership. Our officers were involved in every stage of the festival, from planning to execution, working alongside community leaders and volunteers. The festival was a resounding success. It featured joint performances by police and local youth groups, information booths on safety and community programs, and forums for open dialogue between officers and residents. The atmosphere was one of celebration and cooperation, a far cry from previous years where police presence was often seen as merely supervisory. As the festival concluded without any major incidents, the community's response was overwhelmingly positive. The sense of camaraderie and shared responsibility was evident, and many residents expressed their appreciation for the visible changes in how the festival was managed and policed. Reflecting on these developments, it was clear that the department's efforts were bearing fruit, not just in reducing crime rates, but in fundamentally altering how police were perceived and interacted with the community. However, the work was far from over. Each success was a stepping stone to further challenges and opportunities for growth. As summer approached, with its promise of longer days and shorter nights, the Springfield Police Department was poised to continue its journey towards becoming a model of community policing. With each initiative, each program, and each conversation, we were not just enforcing the law, we were weaving the fabric of a community together, stronger and more cohesive than ever before. The road ahead was still long, but for every step we took, we did so together, with the community leading the way alongside us. New era begins. By summer's end, Springfield had transformed. Our progress was celebrated with a Community Appreciation Day, marking the anniversary of our reform efforts. At the heart of the event was the introduction of the Community Police Advisory Board, a group of residents and officers committed to maintaining our momentum and ensuring the community's voice stayed central to our mission. During the event, I addressed the crowd. This past year has been only the beginning. Together, we've shown that change is possible. Our journey doesn't end here. It continues with each challenge and success. The day concluded with a symbolic community commitment pledge, signed by both police and community leaders, formalizing our promise to work hand in hand for a safer, inclusive Springfield. As fireworks lit up the sky, I reflected on how far we had come. The community was now an active partner, and the foundation for lasting change was firmly in place. Challenges would persist, but Springfield was ready to face them together, united by a shared vision of trust, safety, and respect. On what was supposed to be a typical surveillance day, John Adams, a highly skilled FBI agent, moved through the busy streets of New York City. After years of undercover operations and handling high-stakes cases, John was well-versed in blending into any environment. Dressed in a brown shirt and worn blue jeans, he looked like just another man lost in the city's crowd. He was focused, though, tracking a suspected arms dealer, keeping his movements unremarkable to avoid drawing any attention. The mission was straightforward: observe the target and relay any critical information to the team without direct interference. John's mind was already filled with the details of the operation as he moved quietly among the throng. Unbeknownst to him, two police officers, fresh to their beat in the area, were also scanning the crowds, but with a very different purpose. Officers Carter and Evans, both newcomers to the precinct, had been on patrol for hours, growing impatient as the day wore on. They were both hoping for some action, a chance to prove themselves in a precinct known for its history of profiling and a reputation that attracted scrutiny. It was then that their eyes locked onto John. Carter noticed John's brown shirt and blue jeans. his casual glance around the street. All details that seemed to match the recent broadcast of a suspect wanted for stealing a bike. A mere bike theft. Something Carter muttered under his breath with annoyance. But the description was close enough. And with nothing better to act on, the officers decided to investigate. "Hey, you. Stop right there," Carter called out from the car window as they pulled up beside John. John felt the chill of tension run through him, but kept his composure. Years of training kept his emotions in check. Even as he was caught off guard, he turned to face the officers calmly, realizing that something as simple as a police stop could jeopardize the mission if it attracted too much attention. "Is there a problem, officer?" John asked, his voice steady, revealing nothing of the frustration or confusion he felt. Carter got out of the car, his hand resting near his holster, a subtle signal that he was ready for escalation if it came to that. "We got a report about a stolen bike. You match the description, brown shirt, blue jeans. Seems pretty straightforward to me." John blinked, his mind quickly assessing the situation. A stolen bike? It seemed absurd, almost laughable. But he knew better than to underestimate the potential danger. Any confrontation now could expose his cover and endanger the mission, potentially costing months of work. He couldn't afford to have this escalate. "There must be some mistake," John replied carefully, keeping his hands visible to avoid any misinterpretation. "Cut the crap," Evans interjected as he joined his partner. "We've seen your type before. Hands where we can see them." John raised his hands slowly, his training suppressing the frustration building inside. Around them, a few passersby had begun to notice, some of them pulling out their phones, already recording. John could feel their stares, the quick judgments in their eyes. To them, he was just another man in the street, being stopped and searched without reason. Another nameless individual in a familiar scene of tension with the police. "Listen, officers," John began, keeping his tone level. "I think you got the wrong guy. I didn't steal any bike. Carter cut him off. "Turn around." He pulled out his handcuffs, his intent unmistakable. A surge of anger flared within John. They weren't listening, weren't open to understanding, determined to believe they'd found their suspect without any verification. John had seen this scenario play out too many times before, even experienced it in other forms. But today, it was personal. "I'm a federal agent," he said quietly, trying to keep the peace despite his frustration. "I'm on assignment." Carter's laugh was sharp, dismissive. "Yeah, right. And I'm the President of the United States." Evans snickered, adding with a sneer, "Think you could just flash some fake FBI line and walk off?" John felt the handcuffs snap around his wrists, the cold steel biting into his skin. As they secured him, he could feel the eyes of the crowd, their phones capturing every humiliating second. John's mind was racing, not with fear, but with an unyielding sense of injustice. In the back of his mind, he calculated the possible outcomes, the risks to his mission, the possible fallout. Yet here he was, unable to act, trapped in a situation spiraling out of control. He stayed silent as they pushed him toward the patrol car, his body tense, but his expression calm. This wasn't just about him, he realized. It was about the systemic failures he'd seen and the assumptions people made based on how a person looked. The turning point. John sat in the back of the patrol car, feeling the cold metal of the handcuffs bite into his wrists. From outside, he could hear the growing crowd murmuring, some watching with interest, others with suspicion. His mind raced, not out of fear, but with frustration. His mission was on the line. This was a simple surveillance assignment. And yet, here he was, his credibility and work under threat because of a mistaken identity. Just as he was about to consider his next move, a woman's voice rang out sharply over the din. "Wait, he didn't steal anything." John strained to see through the car window, catching sight of a woman pushing her way forward. She held up her phone, waving it at the officers with a determined glare in her eyes. "I saw the whole thing," she insisted. "You're making a big mistake. The Real thief went that way." She pointed down the street, defiance written on her face. For a moment, the officers hesitated, their earlier confidence wavering. Carter, irritated, tried to brush her off. "Ma'am, please step back," he snapped, his tone sharp. We have this under control." But the woman didn't back down. She held her phone up higher, her voice even stronger. "I've been filming the whole thing, and you're detaining the wrong guy. Everyone's recording this. You're going to regret this." From the back seat, John saw his chance. "Officers," he said, his voice cutting through the noise outside. Calm, but firm. "I've tried to tell you. I'm an FBI agent. You're arresting the wrong man." Carter's response was instant. His skepticism almost reflexive. "Yeah, right. And I'm the president," he scoffed. But beside him, Evan's face showed uncertainty as he took the woman's phone. Reviewing her footage, John could see Evan's expression change, from confidence to doubt. As he watched the video, Evans looked at Carter, his voice low but edged with urgency. "Carter, this doesn't look good. There's a guy in a hoodie who ran right past just before we stopped him." The tension in the air thickened. John could sense that the crowd was starting to turn against the officers, their murmurs growing louder. Phones pointed steadily at the scene. He took a deep breath, knowing that this might be his only chance to put an end to this ridiculous situation. "Check my inside pocket," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "You'll find my FBI credentials there." Evan's expression turned uncertain. He glanced at Carter, who looked visibly torn, his pride and authority clashing with the weight of the evidence. But after a long pause, Evans reached into John's jacket and pulled out a slim black wallet. He opened it, revealing the golden FBI badge inside. The color drained from Evans' face as he realized the magnitude of their mistake. Carter, seeing the badge, lost his earlier bravado. For the first time, he looked shaken. His gaze flickered to the crowd, then back to John, as if trying to process what this meant. The onlookers, sensing a change, were murmuring louder, several of them holding their phones even higher, capturing the officers' reactions. Evans, hands trembling, fumbled with the cuffs. I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "We didn't know. We thought," he trailed off, unable to finish, his face pale. John's eyes met theirs, his voice cold and clear. "You didn't know because you didn't listen. You saw what you wanted to see." The weight of his words hung in the air, a reminder of the assumptions that had led to this moment. A battle for justice. As John stepped out of the patrol car, freed from the handcuffs but still surrounded by the crowd, he could feel a mixture of relief and anger simmering inside him. The officers, Carter and Evans, stood nearby, visibly shaken, their earlier confidence replaced by an awkward silence. They avoided his gaze, their faces flushed with embarrassment. But John wasn't looking for their apologies. He was looking for something deeper, an acknowledgement of the systemic problem that this encounter had revealed. The woman who had intervened gave him a small nod, her phone still in hand. She was still recording, her gaze steady and defiant as she captured every moment of the aftermath. John gave her a nod of gratitude, but he knew that the video now circulating would ignite a spark he could not control. John turned back to the officers, his voice calm but sharp. "This isn't about me. It's about what you saw when you looked at me as suspect. Someone guilty without question. You didn't ask. You assumed." Carter looked away, visibly uncomfortable, while Evans muttered an apology, his voice barely audible. But John wasn't interested in apologies. Around them, the crowd buzzed with a mix of curiosity and judgment. John knew that what had happened here would not stay confined to this street. Phones had captured every detail, and he was keenly aware of the power those recordings held. This wasn't just his story anymore. It was a story that spoke to countless others who had experienced the same injustice without the shield of an FBI badge to protect them. Later that evening, John sat in his apartment, the weight of the day's events still pressing heavily on him. His phone buzzed repeatedly, texts, missed calls, notifications from friends and colleagues who had already seen the footage. The video had gone viral, spreading across social media platforms and news sites, sparking outrage and debate. The story had taken on a life of its own, beyond anything he could have anticipated. John's wife, Rebecca, sat beside him, her face filled with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. He nodded, though his thoughts were a whirlwind. It's not just about today. It's about something much bigger, about the way people like me are treated, the assumptions people make. If I wasn't an FBI agent, this could have ended very differently. Rebecca squeezed his hand, understanding the depth of his frustration. I know, John, but what are you going to do? John looked at her, his resolve hardening. I'm going to make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug. They need to be held accountable, not just the officers, but the whole system that allows this kind of profiling to happen. The following day, John requested a meeting with his FBI supervisor, Michael Turner. Turner, a veteran of the Bureau, had seen his fair share of scandals and knew the political landscape well. When John entered Turner's office, he could see the tension in his superior's expression. Turner sighed, rubbing his temples. John, I saw the video. This isn't going to be easy. We got Washington calling, and they're not happy. This kind of attention isn't good for the Bureau. John's voice was steady. With all due respect, sir, this isn't just about the Bureau. This is about the reality of racial profiling. And it's not going away just because it's uncomfortable. I want to file a formal complaint against those officers. Turner's expression tightened. John, you know that's a slippery slope. The Bureau can't protect you from the fallout if you go public with this. There are politics involved. Then let them be involved. John interrupted. I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing it for everyone who's ever been wrongfully accused. Everyone who didn't have a badge to back them up. This has to stop somewhere. And I'm willing to be the one to push for it. Turner studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, if that's what you want, I'll back you up. But you understand what you're getting into. This will put a spotlight on you. And it won't just be the officers under scrutiny. It'll be you, too. John's resolve didn't falter. I'm prepared for that. Over the next few days, John's formal complaint set off a chain of events that quickly escalated beyond his control. News outlets picked up the story, and John found himself in the middle of a media storm. He gave interviews, spoke about his experience, and emphasized that his complaint wasn't just about one isolated incident. He wanted the public to understand the broader issue of racial profiling, the assumptions that led to his wrongful arrest, and the need for systemic change. Support poured in from activists, community leaders, and individuals who saw themselves reflected in John's story. But the backlash was inevitable. Some questioned his motives, accusing him of stirring up unnecessary trouble, while others criticized his position within the FBI, calling him a hypocrite. John tried to ignore the noise, focusing instead on the people who reached out with their own stories of injustice. Grateful that someone was finally speaking up, Rebecca noticed the toll it was taking on him. One evening, after he'd spent hours reading through messages of support and hate alike, she sat down beside him. John, this is a lot. Are you sure you want to keep going? He looked at her, his eyes tired but resolute. If I stop now, this story just fades. The system goes back to the way it was, and nothing changes. I can't let that happen. Not if I can help it. She sighed, understanding his commitment. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself. 2. We need you. John nodded, giving her a reassuring smile, though he could feel the weight of the fight pressing on him. The road ahead would be long, and he knew that every step forward would bring new challenges. But he was determined to see it through. This was no longer just about clearing his name. It was about changing a system, and he wasn't going to back down. Confronting the system, the following day, John received a call from Michael Turner, his FBI supervisor. He expected the Bureau would react, given the national attention the case was attracting. Turner's voice was cautious but firm, urging John to reconsider his public stance. John, you've become the center of a very sensitive situation. Turner said, the Bureau can't afford to be part of something so politically charged. You'll have to fight this alone if you go forward. John felt a surge of frustration. With all due respect, sir, this isn't just about the Bureau. It's about the reality of racial profiling. And it's time we confront it. I can't back down. Turner's tone softened, but his warning was clear. I get it, John, but once you're out there, the Bureau won't stand by you. You'll be fighting this without our support. Hanging up, John knew he was crossing a line he could never return from. His career might be on the line, but the importance of exposing the systemic failures driving his case felt bigger. Determined, he reached out to Rachel Walker, a prominent civil rights attorney known for fighting police misconduct.